Wonderful. So, welcome everybody for joining Get Savvy's webinar, Why It's Not a Smart Strategy to Create All of Your Content in-house. Somewhat provocative title. We will go on to describe what essentially is the benefits of a hybrid content strategy. Lots of great information to come on that. My name is Matt Stumphy. I'm a lead consultant in learning and development with Get Savvy. I'm joined by my colleague Alan Reed. Alan, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, everybody. Really delighted to be tackling this topic today. One of the most common elements of our research with members, and when we ask about L&D and the value they get from it, is not enough content, not enough content, not enough fresh content. It's always the same month in, month out. And we've had even speakers on our own webinars say we really struggle to refresh the catalogue and keep up with our member expectations. So this is all about that essentially. So really glad to be talking about how we can solve those problems.
Thank you, Alan. And yes, lots of great info coming up on that. A couple of other quick things at the start of the webinar. Thank you if you were joining us for the first time. If you're a regular, indeed, thank you for joining several of these, and hopefully you find them educational. We're actually now an award-winning consultancy up on the right there, the NFP Digital Learning Consultancy of the Year. I'm very grateful for that and a marker of some of the wonderful work we're doing with clients at the moment. Just a note on the heat, if I pass out during this session, Alan will take over. If Alan also passes out, we'll need a brave volunteer from the audience. We are aware if you're in the UK right now that it is certainly sweltering. Quick housekeeping then. We do record these sessions, so you don't have to scramble for a pen right now or read every word on every slide. You will get a copy of it afterwards for a check back at your leisure. As I said, I mentioned the Q&A chat function. If you find that now on your screens in a moment, we've got a warm-up exercise or warm-up moment. But we do want you to interact both with us and with each other during the session. And we always like to give additional offers to our webinars. So on the right there, you'll see, as well as a white paper we've developed around content strategy, you'll also, as always, get a 50% discount to our flagship course, Managing Technology Change Projects. That's for business people who are handed a tech project that they must deliver, whether that's learning or otherwise. So the 50% discount is very generous, and the course is crammed with useful information. So please do avail of that. A quick word on the agenda today. Largely, we will kind of progress this dialogue and debate, Alan and I, around why it's not so smart to have an in-house only strategy for your content. In a moment, I'll talk a bit about the pressure points for in-house teams trying to manage their content development in that way. As Alan's already indicated, that can usually cause a lag in what you can offer to your learners, but there are other factors. Talk a little bit indeed about the hidden costs in that approach versus a hybrid approach. Alan will then go on to talk about where the in-house team is most valuably utilized. You know, if you are an L&D practitioner or a leader yourself, you'll know your time can be stretched. So where is it most valuably used? And then, of course, we'll talk about the benefits of this hybrid content strategy using an in-house team and third-party support. We've got a demo today, which will be brief, but will show you again, you know, as we tend to do on our webinars, some of the rich features available in modern courses using AI. And then we will have a quick discussion and see if you've got any questions for us at the end. So I think before I move on, Alan, if you wouldn't mind just prompting it in any way, if people can get to the Q&A and just let us know your role in your organization, where you're joining us from, and just in one word, what you want to get out of the session today. And again, if you're scrambling for your keyboard and you just want to give us that one word, which is what you're looking for today, we'd really appreciate it. Just so we can follow your line really in how we deliver the session. And Alan, I'll know you'll either see the three dots or people sort of typing in Zoom. Let me know if you see something coming through there, and indeed what people are looking for today, or if they're anywhere exciting outside of.
Well, we've got people from Canada, and we've got people
Yay!
from Norway. So welcome everyone. Um, and actually, the main source of you know the one words are about capacity. how do I increase my capacity without losing the quality of the content. So that's exactly the webinar topic. We're all on the right webinar.
Wonderful. So, commiserations to Canada on their World Cup loss, but it looks like you're still qualifying. Great if you are following Norway in the football. Erling Haaland seems to be doing a wonderful job of scoring every game. And most importantly, capacity. Yes, we do appreciate that L&D teams are almost studiously watching their capacity every day, every week to try and maximize what they can do. Given sometimes, we're given small teams for learning inside organizations.
And we've just
Very
had a
good.
drop in. I beg your pardon, Matt. Sorry, just had
Yeah,
a
go for
drop
it.
in question from Harriet, who said she's also very interested in hearing how to utilize AI to create learning without compromising on quality and personalization, which is fantastic because that's exactly what we spent the last 2 years doing and figuring out where AI can really help and where it can really bite you in the bum. So great. Looking forward to talking about that as well.
Yes, and both that balance of where it is becoming valuable and where we still deploy the good human skills of instructional designers, business leaders, to actually make courses that are a great combination of both factors. Um, as we should, as a learning organization, some learning objectives on screen there for this session. What I would say is our focus in the main is that top one is how do we healthily challenge the assumption that it should be in-house only for content, describing some of the challenges that can face and also some of the benefits of the other approach, the hybrid approach. So if I get us started, then I think, again, we're using an imaginary client or an imaginary, say, board member inside a nonprofit organization. The sort of hypothesis might be we need to do all of this in-house, usually for reasons of it's safer for us, it's cheaper, or it allows us to exercise full control of our educational strategy. Some healthy challenges to that. Safer can mean slower. Of course, you have the reins over everything that you do around your strategy and your learning courses, but trying to do it all yourselves or not having external expertise and support can mean you're producing fewer courses, and that can really have an impact on your overall offering. Cheaper then, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment. Not necessarily, of course, you're an in-house team on a salary, and you deploy the costs you need to do a very good job. But actually, we find the cost benefit analysis of using a good economical third party for design can balance out over time. And then control, we do respect this. You want to keep control over your IP, over your expertise and what you're sharing in your learning courses. But often that control, if you push it to its limits, can actually exhaust an internal team. Collaborations are positive, even over the boundary of our organization and working with third parties. So that's a little bit of setting the scene of some of what we hear and some of our natural responses to that. Again, I doubt this is a huge surprise to anyone on this call, but just to reiterate what some of the drivers for changing our approach to content strategy might be. So we probably know through our learners in whatever way, whether you're a membership body, association, charity, they want always on, always fresh. We call it the Netflix factor. They want more and more courses each time that they enter your environment. And let's face it, the risk is ultimately that they will walk away if they don't see that variety and that fulfillment of their career goals with you. Then, of course, people expect more inside the learning experience itself. Gone are the days of flat, static reading courses, as sufficient. We do need to explore with AI, Harriet and others, ways to make courses more immersive and more interactive, while still retaining the core information we must share. And that's because people have that experience, whether they're gamers as adults, in all of their other online experiences, and of course, if they're doing their self-led learning with another platform. Uh, you've mentioned capacity. Indeed, we always have to keep refining the message on this. It can always be tight inside L&D teams in non-profits. But I think particularly in the corporate world lately, possibly due to AI, there are some senior leadership roles in L&D being removed and an expectation to do more on the front line. So we have to be careful of that and how we actually develop content very smartly. can answer those questions of how do you do more with less? How do you do more with the same resources next year? And finally, of course, we know the L&D leader and practitioner wears many hats, but creating modern, high standard courses can mean you're trying to wear the hat of a user experience designer, somewhat a behavioral scientist, and a data scientist around analytics. So sometimes it's just the right idea to get help and to use a multidisciplinary skill set that a company can bring to your organization. So that's some of the drivers. And again, just to talk a little bit now, before I start to hand over to Alan, around the hidden costs of this in-house only approach. You may have a sense of some of the constraints you might have as an organization. This is built from our conversations with our clients. But to kind of summarize what you can read on screen, there's, for me, sort of three areas of potential additional cost of this approach. There is what I call the hidden factory or the hidden effort cost. So actually doing these courses in-house end to end means an awful lot of granular activity. And for example, if you're engaging in reviews with experts or with your teams, and that's not only you organizing these review points, it's also them making all the changes in the courses that they suggested. You then get the cost of delay. If you are absolutely talented and capable enough to create courses in-house, but you're on a slower timeline to develop them, then financially speaking, and in terms of your member retention, your retention of learner subscribers or your revenue, we can see an impact financially from this cost of delay. And finally, then we've got the opportunity cost. If you must sort of divert your attention and create a lot of courses yourself, what are you leaving alone whilst you're doing that? That could be strategy, working with your stakeholders and your experts, thinking about analytics and what the actual courses are providing people. So, it is always worth considering that there is hidden costs in these areas. And then just a little bit from Alan now. I think, Alan, you're going to go on to talk about where we think in-house L&D teams are most valuably deployed and some of the benefits of this hybrid approach.
Great, and thank you. And this is one of the areas that L&D owners within membership organizations and charities are usually most worried about. It's how do we make the best use of our internal resource to retain control? And of course, that internal resource, if you widen the umbrella a bit, can also include their SMEs, who could be their members. So we work with subject matter experts who are teachers, who are human rights lawyers, who are super expert plumbers. And they are some of the most busy people you'll ever come across. And how do we make the most of their time and not waste it so that we lose their goodwill as well? And actually what we found over many dozens of projects is that the mindset around that can actually cause you a problem, because we've worked with organizations that historically have done everything in-house. And that means they not only own the vision and what needs to be created, they're owning every last aspect of the production, the image creation, moving fonts around and moving bits of text around. And it turns out that's a really poor use of the internal resources time. And it's an incredibly poor use or can put you in a position where you're making poor use of your subject matter experts' time. So the kind of Get Savvy T-shirt for the internal team, the slogan is own the product, not the production. So essentially, you as an internal team and your subject matter experts own the vision of what you're trying to achieve, own the close relationship with your learners and what they will value most and how they would like it explained to them, the priority, the production schedule, setting the standards, because actually, although it's very easy to say everything should be top quality production, there's also a pragmatic element of saying, oh, we've got hundreds of these things and we just need a scalable model for creating them quickly and cheaply and keeping them fresh on our catalog. These are our flagship elements. So you as the internal team get to set those standards, get to set the expectations around that. And it's all about you delivering to the organizational goals. Matt's mentioned membership retention, membership growth. All of those things belong to the internal team in terms of what would delight our members. What you don't have to be doing is pushing the mouse around on every last part of it. And what we find as a result of that hybrid model is that the production quantity goes up hugely, with the internal team being 100% in control of it. So we've got some examples here of where internal teams can find themselves just swamped with work that should be done by other people that doesn't need your in-depth knowledge of your subject matter expertise, that doesn't need your in-depth knowledge of what your members want and your organizational goals. You need the people who are doing this to know enough about those things. But essentially, what they really need to be knowing a lot about is what a modern tool set looks like, how to do things properly, where does AI fit into all of this now, and essentially producing things that you can evaluate, producing things at scale and to a quality that you can then say, yes, that's great, let's move to the next one, or no, can you refine that? And you're able then to supervise and manage all of those things at a production scale that really works for your members. So the smart model that we've realized over a period of years is that you, your leadership and your subject matter experts own the product, own the value of what you're trying to achieve, own the vision of how it's going to be achieved and what you're providing for your members that's best going to serve them, best going to serve your organization. And then you allow a hybrid model with expert instructional designers, expert production specialists, people who are expert in the technical tools, because there's an increasing suite of technical tools that are required. Everything from video to AI avatars to image creators, and of course storyboard and question bank management. There's just this huge range, and you don't need to be intimately acquainted with all of that in order to get the best quality content for your members at a production scale that's going to keep them coming back and not feeling like I've already consumed all of this and I'm not interested anymore. So essentially, curated content at scale is the benefit that we found over many projects of the hybrid model. So what we see, and with organizations we're working with now, bear in mind, most organizations we're working with and have worked with over years, they have fantastic content. You know, they have this amazing content that they've built up over years. They are the experts in their field. They are the experts in their industry. But this content is kind of dead in a ditch because it's in a PDF format. It's in a PowerPoint. It's in something that used to be delivered in person is no longer appropriate to be delivered in person. So what we see good looks like in practice is that all of that fantastic content that has your voice and has you and your personality and your DNA in it, that can be transformed largely in isolation. We don't need to have endless conversations with you about it because the content speaks for itself. And we can then have these touch points where you evaluate as it's turned into this modern, interactive, online, self-paced asset. Then the other side of it is where you've just got a thought bubble for a new piece of content, a new idea, a new course. And then that's where there's far more engagement and far more kind of ideas around the table. So good looks like you're able to tackle both of those things at scale with you owning the vision for it and still managing to create a volume of content that your members are expecting.
Thank you, Alan. That's really great. So that's a look through where we believe, you know, your great skills are best deployed, and then also how you could start to introduce this hybrid strategy and what good looks like. So just a few extra things here. You know, we're very keen at Get Savvy about sharing, you know, how you get going. You know, if you've exhausted sort of the in-house only strategy right now, or you've got a good approach, but you just want to grow and scale what you do. Here's a few tips. So, of course, you can start with your portfolio. And practically, I would say you look at what, let's say, you're going to do in the next 3 to 6 months or in next year's plan, and you say, well, what do we want to achieve with the end goal in mind? And then how do we want to do that? How do we balance the courses that we might want to keep in-house and develop fully ourselves versus what we could actually offer out to a third-party supplier? Or indeed, if we need a big drive, how could we actually prioritize and budget to do a lot next year with a supplier so we take a big leap forward? So that's really examining your portfolio. And that leads us on to quick wins. So I've probably already mentioned this, but to sort of reinforce that, if in the next 3 to 6 months you want to take a big leap forward, what priority courses would you choose to do that with? Or indeed, as Alan has said, if you've got a bank, a whole volume of assets that you can convert into learning, how could you in one jump offer a lot more to your learners through the use of a third party? We then talk about getting your hybrid squad together. And this is, as it sounds, it is blended. It is both the complement of your subject matter experts, however much of their time you get, your internal team and your various skill sets, and then the various members of a third party team. So it does feel like all one team. But obviously, you've got that boundary of who works in house and who works as a contractor for you, or indeed as a third party service. We always love the sprint approach, and this is great if you're setting off from a clean break or start. So, if you want to run a pilot, let's say, with a third party and picking a particular course or a small set of courses, of course, doing one or several short sprints can really accelerate the momentum of what you're doing. You also get review points and control points in there if that's something you're worried about. You can actually review your progress and learn some lessons as you go. And probably further to that, we're always going to recommend monitoring, continuous learning and development. So building that into your content strategy with a third party will help you manage the account with them, or how valuable their use of time is for you, as well as what you're doing yourselves. And again, monitoring can also lead you to some of the analytics and what learners are benefiting from with this new approach to course creation. One more on this. If you're sort of out there thinking like, well, I am at a standing start right now. I'm a bit stretched. How can I actually begin to explore this? Well, obviously, there's the whole element of finding yourselves trusted suppliers, content partners, but kind of generally picking one exemplar course that you would like to run or is in some format at the moment that you want to transform, and actually applying these principles as part of your prep work that you can then discuss with your third party partner. So some simple ones in here, but you're going to obviously look at the objective and the audience for this course. It might be something new you want to explore. It might be doubling down on something you must do as part of your remit as a nonprofit. That moves us on there to actually not only thinking about learning outcomes, but actually having an upfront approach to assessment. So, is this a course that we could develop to a certain easy level with a quiz or some quizzes involved? Or is this a course that, even as an exemplar we start with, we're going to need a final assessment and we're going to need to think a little bit more about that? And just to note, we'll look at some of this in a moment, but assessment creation and validation is part of the way we're using generative AI at the moment to complement our own skills and those of our clients. So that's a quick win if you need to get assessments created. Tone of voice and branding is very important. I probably focus on branding. We work with several clients, and it's always a bit of a scramble to get the branding guidelines and to understand how branding should be applied to the learning courses. So just thinking about that up front and preparing some of your collateral can help when you share that with a third party. And that's probably also counts to your accessibility statement or your accessibility principles. We know we must cater courses to different learning styles. We've also got, adjustments required and general accessibility features. And of course, neurodiversity is more of a conversation these days. So how do we fit our courses to those diverse needs? So having a clarity on that understanding is good as prep. And then final points here, you do want to start to think about how your courses are going to be staged, whether you've got an LMS or a platform already, and also whether you need a new one. and then how you actually want to capture certain key data. You might want to link your course completion data back to your CRM. Is that something you're going to do as part of a pilot, or is that something that can wait till later? Making those decisions is always important. And then finally, then, of course, we talk about retaining control internally, feeling like you are overseeing this. So often that can be defining upfront, key approval and sign-off points. Just who will lead on that internally and what you'll expect from your partner when you onboard them. So if you view all of this as kind of how do I prepare, there's some really good principles in here of what you might do up front in order then to be able to explore an exemplar course with a third party provider. So we're going to slightly pivot now. I think while I'm sharing screen, Alan, do have another check for me in Q&A. And again, if people have questions at this point, please feel free to put them into the chat so that we can help you when we get to the Q&A section today. I'm just going to spend a moment now finding our demo,
Great.
and then we'll actually walk you through that.
Great. And there's a question around use of AI tools. And just while you're sharing your screen,
Yeah.
I think that we've got a whole webinar on that coming up. But just a few brief remarks. What we found over the last year is that, or 18 months actually, that various authoring tools now say, oh, just upload your PDF and we'll create a course out of it. So of
Yes.
course we explored that very quickly. And then we found that what's produced is not usable. And then we also found that fixing it takes longer than it would have taken to do it, quotes, the old-fashioned way. However, there are ways of getting the most out of AI-based tools, but it involves the right places where you build in the instructional design element, where you use different types of AI, and then you do get the benefit. So we're looking forward to talking about that, because it does make a game-changing difference to the pace at which you can provide content, and the cost of providing content is a fraction of what it used to be. But there are some significant learnings that need to take place first, or else you're going to find yourself exposed. Great, Matt, thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question as well, because that might be a good framing for the demo. So now is a good point to say we do offer these services, and there are other instructional designers out there. There are other companies, but what we are finding, as the question has indicated, is in introducing AI, which we'll show you in a moment, all of the benefits of certain courses that we've created to share. It is a combination of a lot of accelerated work, a lot of smarter work, knowing how to use the tools effectively, but an awful lot of checks and balances. And what we're actually finding we're creating is some pre-validation tools to help us up front before we introduce AI, and some checks post AI, if you like. So, there's a whole process that is autonomous. The machine is involved and really helping, but nothing is lost in terms of our scrutiny or our checks and balances around standards of learning and standards of content. Some of the courses we're working with at the moment have real mandatory content that must be preserved throughout this transformation. So, it is definitely a task to continue to be studious around that, but we are finding the AI tools are incredibly powerful. And let's show you. So what I'll do is Get Savvy, when we develop courses, operates on three kind of levels of learning experience design, if you like. There is visualizing in a better way some of your course content, whether that's existing assets, usually it is. It's then upper level, creating a more interactive learning experience. And that again can be from a course that exists or from underlying assets that you have. And probably more than if we go up a level again, we want an immersive learning experience. And not always, but in our recent kind of projects, we found that that might be a flagship course someone wants to develop that's based on brand new ideas. So it's kind of scaling up the level of experience a learner gets, and whilst keeping costs very affordable and using AI features as we do that. So given that primer, you all recognize this is based around common authoring tools today, but I'll start to discuss where the actual AI tends to show up. So simple introductions here. What we always suggest is you might as your source content, be starting with something like this. So very unattractive. It might be very detailed and accurate. It's kind of your source material for, let's say, a short course. So nothing wrong with that. But again, it's how we transform this that is really important. So I'm going to start to talk about features, that AI is helping us introduce probably more easily and in some cases in a quicker way. So for example, we know people learn in different ways. You're already seeing some introductory information here in this course example, but let's add some audio. So I'll pause for a moment.
Get Savvy leverages 30 years of experience to help organizations manage technology projects effectively. By offering unbiased advice and tailored strategies, they ensure each project aligns with organizational goals and delivers successful outcomes.
So we got some audio there. Some of you may be exploring this. This is actually so text to voice functionality using AI and using an AI voiceover. So again, some of these features just weren't available before, or they were incredibly expensive to implement. This is much, much easier now using the tools we've got at our disposal. And again, for the learner, they're getting this combination of something they can read, or if they prefer, something they can listen to. This is simpler, but I do think we're finding AI tools are helping us order what could be quite a volume of on-screen text in an exciting way. And of course, whether it's branded imagery or stock imagery from online sources, we get this nice layout of the text and pictures again. So we are catering to different learning styles there. So really that feature using AI is about the speed at which it will suggest something like that to you that you can then refine. I mentioned branding earlier on. So this is Get Savvy's branding, obviously, as you can see. So not only do we get AI suggesting here a kind of a flip card feature that is quite attractive in itself. And as we say, it's under the banner of being more visual than just putting this in bulleted points on a screen. It's also quite quickly incorporating the brand information we've fed to it. So getting our branding imagery or getting our brand logos ready before an AI exercise can mean we can do some of this and we can do it a lot more economically. Simple features again, everyone loves a concertina. Again, just for your reference, this is getting suggested imagery using our branding from AI inside these authoring tools, and also just chunking up the content that makes it a lot more palatable if you're moving through this at speed or you're moving through this on the go. A couple of additional features. There are many different ways to make something more visual. This is another step change in what we're seeing using the AI features that is kind of transforming our content in a much easier way. We've got 3 examples here. One is just something which, again, almost reads as a presenter speaking to slides, but I should say this is an AI avatar coming up.
Get Savvy is an online learning platform with a brand new way of delivering immersive learning that is currently not available anywhere else. Get Savvy has been developed by Glenda Parker and Alan Reed, who have distilled 20-plus years of delivering real-world technology projects for nonprofits.
So I'd love to go on there, particularly as it involves Alan, but
That's all right. And there's a tiny bit of lag, by the way, because it's playing through Zoom. But when you're really playing it, it's a perfect lip sync version. So yes,
oh, thank you.
People get the idea.
Yes, you might be seeing that. And to pause, AI avatars are a choice. We have actually used AI avatars a lot in our flagship course and in our other materials. But certainly, if we think about cost and time and value, we get a really good impact here, as you've seen, at a fraction of the cost of real life production. Now, it's not to abandon having real people speaking to camera, but it is really choosing where you can introduce that versus where the AI tools might help as a scion of that. Animation is a huge step forward using AI tools. I think we've all seen Will Smith eating his noodles, and I know we've got different views on kind of how animation can be represented using AI. But this is just a simple example. You might set this into a course. It's been pretty economical to create, and certainly a lot quicker and a lot cheaper than it would have been pre-AI. So you just get that nice moment of several learners really enjoying the recent Get Savvy course they've completed. And then a final moment, I would say this is another notch up in terms of quality. And this is a little bit nearer to some of the amazing things we're seeing with animation in the last 18 months. So this might be a moment in learning, could potentially be for younger learners, but you'll see the impact of just how good this animation is. So that's almost Disney or Pixar-esque, albeit created by us in a much more economical way. So hopefully you're getting the impression as I move through this that there are lots of different features we can add that are either just introduced by AI or accelerated by our use of those AI tools. And that's whilst not losing the integrity of learning outcomes and flow and those other good principles of online learning. A final one here, just in this visual course. I'll play this in a moment, but we can also start to introduce webinar content that we've actually already created and implant or embed that into a learning course in a much easier way at the moment through AI video editing tools.
Organization, and that's really distilling something like 30 years of experience in projects, and this, you must do this and please don't do that, to make sure that you don't trip over your own feet and you have
So
a
this might be
successful
sort of, I don't
outcome.
know, a screen within a screen within a screen within a screen, but that's Alan on a webinar from last year, from a full-length webinar recording that you can actually access online. But we've cut and trimmed it into what is bite-sized content within a learning course. So you get the value as well in some of this work of using pre-existing assets like recordings and just smartly embedding them into courses as you need. So I'll probably pause there, but this is several ways where you can see the visual features of AI being implemented in a way that is affordable. I guess in our context, using a third-party supplier from something that could be quite basic source material. I'll go on from there, and I want to show you some of the features from the second course, and then we'll dip into the third one. So interactive for me in our recent experience has become a lot more about actually applying these features in the context of the learning that you are creating. So you see what I mean here. Again, we all love a quiz, and we have all probably developed very basic formats for quizzes. But the good thing with AI tools is it started to become very smart very quickly and more easily. So you've got the AI avatar here and presenting to you on screen. And this could be a customer service environment. And you've got a question there and the ability to see whether that's right. You've got a more construction example here. So again, if construction was your industry and you wanted to brighten and make more interactive a quiz question, you have this approach. And again, we always have the try again function as well. Unfortunately, not got that one right because I don't know that much about construction. But as you can see, the visual impact is strong. You're getting the interaction in this example, and it's a much bigger impact than a simple quiz. A police or a security example here, if that were your industry. We all know conversation is a really good way to engage learners in interaction. This is a brief vignette about whether they can go in and perform a raid. And there's another point I'd mention here. I may or may not get the question right. I have got that. This is also preserving those kind of correct or incorrect responses. And as you can see in this context, it's actually delivering something that is law, so it is retaining mandatory information that you need to share, let's say with police officers in this example, but it's brightening the design and it's making it more interactive. People could get really sort of stultified just reading a lot of case law or reading a lot of section examples that they need to quote in the live setting. This is a much brighter way of doing it. Process example here, very quickly. So you might be a process-driven organization. You can use the visuals that AI, again, is suggesting here that we would go on to refine to visualize a process, particularly if it's a safety environment. And this is very important. And just to note, if a third party or AI has created this, you can spend your time focusing on things like, are each of the stages of the process described accurately? Does that fit our wider standard needs? In this example, for water treatment safety. Classic quizzes don't go away inside these tools, and it's always good, actually, interestingly, for interaction, but to give a break, maybe from some highly visual content to keep these in. But obviously, we have much brighter tools to play with right now. And a couple of final things, just a different variation on the simple multiple choice questions or the drag and drop. Again, easily created using the tools, with all of the things that we would expect, like incorrect markers and the ability to try again. And then we even have things like, some of your quizzes might need to actually confirm people's knowledge through writing. Those features are preserved as well. So you get this blend of certain things that are a bit more traditional, and definitely these features that are more about the context of the learning and making things more interactive. And then finally, then I'll just do the third example course, because there's some exciting things in here. As I said before, if you are thinking about this as a pilot, or you are further along in your roadmap and you want to create a true flagship course that's very exciting or needs to be very immersive, or indeed you might be using something that has to operate in the physical environment, that's where I'd say our level 3 design and some of these features come into play. Simple example here, and this is very powerful. Again, we're talking about animation here, but this is just something that, a visual studio might have taken weeks to develop years ago. And it's much shorter and much easier to do that now. If you were looking at something for younger learners, this would be a really impactful, immersive moment up front, say, in one of your courses. I'm not the strongest Star Wars fan, but any if you are, it's a little moment for you. We do know spatial learning is really key. And again, whether you were online and you were exploring a space, which is quite immersive as a practice, or indeed you were in a physical environment, you can see here AI is suggesting where these sit using your underlying content, and it's giving you some really strong visuals as well to explore. So that's kind of spatial awareness. Another example of a very different type of quiz here. So, and I keep emphasizing this because it's important. There's a slight nuance here that I can actually correct my answers as I move through. So hence why we're showing you another quiz. So I've got a few wrong there. If I take that out before I submit, I can actually play with this a bit. Looks like that's more right. So again, this would be a great learning tool for kids who are starting to learn a little bit more about literature. I can submit them. But that's highly immersive and gamified, and it's been developed at a fraction of the time or effort. I feel like this one is a museum piece. If you were walking along in a museum and you could turn a dial, this is telling the story of a space journey. So you can move through it, you can pause at different stages. But again, the critical point here is the features are allowing us to create this, and you spend the time validating the content rather than toiling away, achieving or not achieving something that's impactful. This is an example from something, if you are in the UK, that you might see very easily a space in Kew Gardens. So it's about the journey of Monstera development, or the health of Monsteras. And again, if you were in a physical environment, you get to immerse yourself in the various advice, beautiful imagery, as you walk through a space. And there's one final piece here which I'll share with you, and then we'll move back to broader content today. This is from our flagship course, and I just want to show you a couple of features which we have put into our level 3 design, for our own course, but it is certainly something you can explore if you're looking for more ambition. So I think that's fine. I can move straight to this. So a couple of things here. We have a dashboard inside our course for project managers, and it has lots of different features, like giving them a project brief for the various stages, describing the characters that they actually will encounter in a real life project. But you get things which, are simple interactions. This is the storyboard or the pathway for their learning throughout the course. And this is just a way we offer templates in our course, but it's an easy way for them to actually tick through when they've completed a template. So they're immersing themselves in the course, they're immersing themselves in a real life project, and they're using our dashboard to do that. So this is kind of, again, some of the checklist items they might be looking at throughout the course. And the final thing I want to show you here is just a quiz. So this is our course, and if I move to the wrap-up section, we have a check your understanding. But the key thing here, I'll let the content play in a moment.
Now that you have completed,
and then we can just move through to the end.
don't forget to download and complete your vital project templates. Here is a checklist of the things you should have completed during this phase before moving on to the next phase of your project.
So we'll let that run out. So that's our avatar tutor again speaking to us about this stage of a project, but this is a checklist really. And then we move on to the quiz itself. So if I go into here,
You have completed this module. Let us check your understanding with a few questions. You must attempt all 6 questions. After you have attempted all the questions, click on the Go to Results button to see your
fast forward that along given time. But again, what we're doing here is it's not just a set of final assessment questions. We have this kind of beautiful track diagram, and people follow the way through it in a much more immersive way. So this is a simple question. You're going to still want to keep these in your courses, even when they're high quality. I've got that one correct, which is fab. But then I'm going to move through to another option. I'll just do this one given time. But you can see I'm sort of tracking along in a gamified way through the various things I need to know to prove my knowledge around project management. So although the simple format of the questions is preserved here, it's this actual journey that makes it more gamified, makes it more immersive. So I hope that's useful. That's a real whistle-stop tour through a lot of features at, as I say, 3 levels of content maturity. And I think, Alan, if you give me a moment to share back, I think we're just going to have a little discussion about how we govern this type of relationship with a third party when we're creating any type of course.
Sure. And just while you're sharing screen, we've had a really good question come in, which was essentially, it's great to talk about all of this third party working, and I get the idea. But what do you do? And I'm sure a lot of delegates are in this position. What do you do if the leadership team is saying there is no money, no budget for any kind of external help? And that's the starting point, by the way, of a lot of organizations that we that we work with. And one of the things that we encourage people to do, and sometimes with our help, by the way, we put together the business case and how much would this really cost. But the starting point, even doing it internally, is to say, what volume of content are we really trying to create? What would be the optimum type and volume of content that would really prove our value to our members, help us make money on retention and people feeling the value of the relationship with us? And then what is the cheapest way to provide that volume of content? So whereas people often start the other way, they say, here is our internal team, here is our maximum capacity, and therefore this is the volume of content that's going to come out of that. If you flip it around and talk about what you should be doing, what you would ideally be doing, and then look at the most cost-effective way of doing what you should ideally be doing, because that's how you as an organization will make the most money overall, then it kind of becomes inarguable. But I'm really happy to have conversations on a one-to-one basis, doesn't cost a bean, about how that's been approached at different organizations. So please, let's carry on that conversation.
And I think, Alan, just before you press on, I know we're in the sort of final section of the webinar today, but yeah, I'd only add, look, we respect the reality. Sometimes the answer you get is there's no money there. And as Alan's indicating, that's much more about proving a business case and actually generating the research and the rationale that says, you know what, not only if we create more courses will it be valuable to us, but if we use this hybrid approach, that actually works better than trying to do it all in-house. So it is a lot more about that leadership work to prove a business case and to secure investment. The other thing I would mention is, hopefully you've heard it a couple of times today, we do always think about cost benefit analysis and cost comparisons. So you can start to say if there's a little budget, but not much, let's start there. Let's test this with a pilot approach, and let's show that actually one way might actually be more economical than another. And we genuinely believe, whether you're doing it or with us or with another third party, the AI features are mattering. They're providing better quality at more economical rates. Alan.
Yes. So let's just do this really quickly. But essentially, I'll just set the principle, which is when you are working in a hybrid model, and it ties very nicely into the previous point, which is the cost per piece of content is a fraction of doing it internally. And it all works out because you're producing vastly more content than before. But how do you establish the control of that? And there's a whole series of things here that we do when we're working with an organization for the first time, that we're setting up this model, this cadence of meetings, this cadence of templates. It's a little bit like getting someone in to decorate your house. You've got to establish the standard with them because it's unique for everyone. One decorator could spend a half a day and paint the whole room, and another decorator could spend a half a day and just prepare a door. So I'm going through this now, so it's a bit close to home. So establishing that standard that matters to you is what all of these steps are about. It's all unique and it's all custom, but they do make sure that you retain complete control over the entire process whilst achieving your production goals.
Fantastic, Alan. So yes, you get to sort of oversee the standards, even of it completion. And do you want to speak a little bit just about kind of useful metrics? Because we know all of this needs to be reported on, particularly to leadership, around how effective it's been.
I think so. And where organizations are not typically used to thinking about metrics in a particular way, it's to think about what are the costs for producing a course or a piece of content, and how do we measure that cost? So the surprising kind of counterintuitive thing is that producing the content in a hybrid way is an awful lot cheaper than doing it purely in-house, just because of the volume of time difference in doing both of those things. So when you start introducing your organization as a whole to these factors here, speed, satisfying the expectations of learners, increasing the take-up amongst learners, all of those things, then the model becomes easier to justify. I'm going to say a startling thing as well, or might be a startling thing. We've done this for years now, and never once has it resulted in any reduction in the size of the internal team. In fact, it's always resulted in the internal team changing the work they do to be the owner of the outcome, and having that supervisory and guidance and hands-on at the right places role, instead of pushing the mouse around on everything. And it essentially means, in many cases, because the volume of content is so much higher, the size of the internal team actually grows as well, whilst working in a hybrid model. So start thinking about it in terms of your role is to achieve these things, less about, oh, I must do every single thing myself. And then that tends to work really well for the internal team and the organization as a whole.
Yes, and I think the only thing I'd say, I know we're going to go on to a quick poll and the close, but yeah, you can start small with this. You can start with pilot with one exemplar course, proving the value of it, measuring the value of it, and building from there. But I would agree with Alan. Often this can lead to expansion because, especially if we start to retain members in a different way, or we've got learning subscribers and those grow, or if we're a charity and we're seeing more engagement from our volunteers through this type of learning, those are all powerful things to bring back to a budget conversation. Alan, I think a given time, we're going to drop a quick poll in just for a bit of insight. And then I think we've got a couple of things both just to close out today. Possibly I would, yeah, thank you. So obviously this very simple question about how much, where does your current team spend their time? And I think this is just a little bit of research insight for us to see, how near we are to your reality. And I would say if you are working through the poll and you have any final questions for us today, now would be a great time to drop them in, just because we're going to wrap in a moment, but we could cover a couple of those before we do.
Great. We'll just give it a few more seconds as people are answering the poll, and then I'll just end the poll and share the results. Really interestingly, the great majority of time being spent is actually on the production, the moving the mouse at every stage of the process. So that's really interesting there. Kind of goes to the heart of the messaging.
Yes.
Here.
And I think wonderful for me, a key insight is it's not just you stop doing this, as we've said in some of our slides today. It's just where might you be best placed versus where might you introduce some support. And that's particularly to get back to maybe some activities and that opportunity cost. That might have less focus now, given how much time you might be spending producing. Okay, great. I think there's a couple of final pieces here. Alan and I will share them in the 5 minutes that remain. I think just a quick check-in, Alan. I'm going to bring this up on screen, but just to say we've almost vocalized or visualized some of the objections to this approach that we do here, or we help clients manage. Before I sort of say we could talk about that for a moment, Alan, is there anything else in chat just in terms of people's questions or comments today?
It's really repetitions of, with the greatest respect, of the content we've already covered in terms of producing at scale, and a lot of interest in the money side and the AI side. Just in the interest of time on here, I think the one that we haven't talked as much about is that very bottom one, and let's only do that one. Our
Yes.
experts know it best, and that is a really valid point. You are the experts on your members and your messaging. What we found very often with this hybrid model is it allows the membership organization, the charity, to make the most of their experts' time. By which I mean that they're able to say, okay, here's where we're going to get some input from the experts. And then, what is it you're trying to achieve? What is the content, etc. Or even existing content, and here are some guidelines of how we'd like it to be presented in a modern way. There's a short conversation there, however much depth is required. And then the very next thing those internal experts will see is a pretty good quality representation of that content and their input and their messaging, so that they're able to then comment on a near finished product. And that gets them excited. They're able to. So you're actually involving them at the right stage. You're not wearying them with too much, of different endless meetings, etc. And it allows you to make the most of your internal time to steer the content, to actually give guidance to it and set the tone, rather than doing stuff that's lower down the production table and not making the most of those people's time. So that's the only one I think, Matt, given the time we're at, that we wanted to cover here.
Yes, I might summarize that and say, we're finding a lot of the effort is lost upstream. So quicker creation, quicker iteration of the design, and you can apply that expert effort to validation and sign off, as Alan suggests. Alan, I think you've got a moment for us just around kind of our offer, and then I'll wrap the session today.
Very good. So a free offer to everyone here, which is send us your most difficult content. This used to always, in the old days, be a hugely chargeable exercise. You'd have to spend a lot of money to find out what your options were. And given the new world, we like to offer that to the delegates here for free. So send us any piece of content or a link in any format, which could be a webinar you ran 3 years ago, it could be a PDF document, a PowerPoint, someone else's course they used to run in person, and then we'll do all of the stuff on the right. So essentially, it'll put you in this much more informed position about, oh, here's what could be done, here's how long it would take, here's how much it would cost, and this is exactly how it would work in a hybrid model. So nothing to lose here. It's just putting yourself in that much more informed position. So we'd encourage you to take us up on that one.
Yes, so we're through our tools, as Alan says, able to offer free proof of concept really for this approach, and definitely sending us your content is a very quick way to do that. So a couple of final things. Again, I hope this message has come across today. This is not about you doing less, you producing, stopping producing. It is about just getting that additional support, that expertise, balancing costs, and actually making you stronger for the future. And then just to say a couple of things in wrap today, you'll get the recording of the session, so you can certainly look back at that or particular sections if you'd like. We're also going to release this white paper that we've got for our content strategy approach, and again, underlining some of the messages you've heard today. You can book a session with us or send us some content, as Alan suggested. That is free. It's free consultation, because we do believe in offering support for free. And as you'll see, we do love your feedback as well. So very quick form on screen. If you would take a moment to complete that now, we'd be very grateful. We do monitor this and how our different topics land. And as Alan has suggested, if you've got a challenge at the moment or you just want to explore something, we are available to do that with you on a call. So please, if you would give us your feedback now and answer that question, that'd be fantastic. And just say 2 July webinars coming up. If you're part of our community, you're joining these regularly. One is a continuation of our Lunch and Learn series, which probably will return to demos around how we can modernize courses that need that, that have gotten a little stale or lack some of the features that we are starting to see now, more and more. And the other one is one of our standard webinars later in July, which looks at cost factors around an LMS project and an LMS platform. So how can you make that economic if that's an area of need for your organization right now? So a couple of webinars coming up. We'd love you to join us, and whether you're a first timer coming back or you're with us regularly. Thank you for your time today. Somehow I managed to stay alert and not fall over with the heat. Alan, you did the same, so that's got to be a bonus, right? And thank you for joining us from across the world. It's wonderful to see UK delegates and also international ones on these webinars.
Right. Thanks, everybody.